the scene. So let's go ahead and create the other ground elements, mainly the road, the lines either side, the lines in the middle, and also this flow area you see with the yellow grid lines. Starting with the road, this is going to be a cube shape, and I will set the Y height to just 10, the X size, or the width rather, to 600, and then the Z length to 20,000 centimeters, which, if you recall, was the same length we set for the entire landscape. So this is going to go from edge to edge, starting about here, or starting there, all the way to the other side. And we can then get our car here, which, by the way, is to scale. So, you know, if you, for example, go to the main selection tool and change the transform section here from size to size plus, it will show you the actual overall size of everything inside of this null object. And you can see it's about 4.2 meters long, about a meter high, and then nearly 2 meters wide. And those are roughly the actual dimensions of this car in real life. It just means that if I insert other objects into this project, and or have to do things like calculating how fast an object should go, because I am using real world scale values, I can actually do those things more accurately and do some actual calculations and so on. So that's why I like to work with as close to real scale as I can for most of my projects. Anyway, moving on, we need the lines that we see down the or either side of the road and in the middle. And once again, this is going to start as a cube, and it's going to have a width of, let's say, 20, a height of 10 centimeters, and a length of 400. I'll bring this out here just so we can see how that looks. Let's undo. And I'm going to place this inside of a cloner. So if I hold the Alt key at the same time as I insert a cloner, the cloner will automatically become a parent of the cube. And that's the relationship you need there to clone any object. By default, it's set to linear, so it just clones everything in a straight line going up. We want to change this mode from linear to grid array. So we have this kind of thing, and we can set the count in the X, Y, and Z direction. So the X is basically left to right. This is going to be just 2. And let's just make sure it's wide enough to be at the edge of the road. The actual exact number here is going to be 620 centimeters, and we have something like this. It lines up just outside the road surface. Okay. We also need to make it longer in this direction. And if we go down here where it says mode, by default it will be set to per step, and this is in newer versions of Cinema 4D. In older versions, you didn't have this sizing mode. You only had a different mode, which I think was labeled scale, which in the newer versions has been renamed to endpoint. Anyway, if we switch to that for now, we can actually just define the overall length of this entire section. So let's type in 20,000 here. The difference between endpoint and per step is that with per step, you define the gap between the clones, whereas with endpoint, you define the overall scale or length of the whole cloner object. Anyway, if I zoom out here, you can now see that the cloner spans the entire length of our landscape, starting from one end all the way to the other side. And we can now fill in the gaps in between by increasing the number of clones. And once again, the actual number here is going to be 26. And that's just what I did when I was doing the testing for this. And any numbers you see me punch in anywhere, I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. I've done this project twice already before. Anyway, so if we do that, we see we have lines arranged in this kind of pattern. If we were in per step mode, this value would be set to 800 centimeters, and that's the distance now from the center of each clone to the next one. Moving on, let's just name things correctly here so we stay organized. This is going to be the sidelines. We'll close this. Let's make a copy, hold Control on any object and just drag down, and you will make a copy of it. Let's call this center lines. And this time we're just going to have one clone in the X direction, still 26 in the other direction. We also want to offset its position either forward or backwards. It doesn't really matter here. In the transform section of this cloner, let's go to position Z and set this to 400. And now this line is just slightly offset from the two outside lines. You can see it's intersecting with the road surface. So let's go to the transform section once again. Just type in like 2.5 here or something, just to raise it up slightly so that it sticks out and is completely visible. And I think we already made sure that our car was sitting on top of the road instead of in it. So about here or so. That's it for the sidelines. We just need to create this other surface we see on the outside. This is also going to be a plane, which I will call the floor. Once again, it's going to be 10,000 centimeters wide and 20,000 centimeters long. And I need this to be higher than the ground level of our landscape, but lower than the road itself. That's going to be about 5. Maybe that's 2 actually. Maybe 2.5 centimeters in the Y position. So this kind of thing. Let's give this more segments. Let's go for 50 and 100. And this is also going to have an atom array version of itself. So let's instance it and then put the instance inside of an atom array. And when I do that, you see the new grid lines next to the floor. Let's give it a cylinder radius of 0.5 and a sphere radius of 0.5 also, and subdivisions down to 4. And actually, I think these lines are going to be a bit wider. So let's go for 1 and 1. We can see how that looks later. If it's too strong, we can always turn it back down. Okay, now that we have our main road, we now need a bit of decoration on the sides, and that's what